Hello guys, this is welcome to South Korea. My name is Andrew and this is Gangnam TV, and today we have a special guest here is Anthony Johnson. He is a professor in Seoul National University, am I right?
Yes, you are. Hello everyone.
So Anthony, what do you do? How are you? First question.
I'm fine. I couldn't be better, thank you. Yes, I love being here in Korea.
How is the weather for you?
Too hot.
Yeah, that was...
In the winter we say it's too cold, in the summer it's too hot, but I prefer being hot rather than cold, so it's okay today.
So, how come you're Englishman here in Korea?
I was offered a job at the Seoul National University of Science and Technology on the MSDE scheme, that's Manufacturing Systems and Design Engineering. Originally I was an external examiner for Northumbria University, who actually run the course, or is running career for Northumbria University. So I came across for 4 years as external examiner. Now external examiner is kind of an adjudicator, a referee, to make sure that students are okay, that everything's fair. If there's any problems, I will sort that out, make a final decision, and so on. After 4 years, the tenureship finishes, but I was asked to come here as a visiting professor. So, after a 28-year career in teaching in the UK, I came here as a visiting professor. The pressure was on for me to get my PhD. I did a very late PhD. And once that was done, then I could apply for a full tenureship, which I finally got. So I'm the only full tenure visiting or foreign professor in the university. It's a very privileged position.
That's great, that's great. So what was your first impression about country when you just arrived, first landing?
That was 2010. And everything, Asia is very different culture to Western culture, and I was just interested but completely confused. And we had a guide, but which was very useful, but I couldn't read the language. I couldn't even use the subways in Seoul. And so it was it was a great experience, but a very strange experience. But since then I've become very familiar with Korean society and culture, and I'm integrating myself into it. I find it a very nice place to be.
Okay, how's your language?
That's minimal. I'm working on it, but it takes practice.
I think your language is much more better than mine. So you're here already 3.5 years, so I'm less than half year. So.
Andrew, I think we found out the other night that your Korean language is much better than mine.
Oh, come on. Tony, how could you describe the Korean people? Who was your first Korean friend or people you met personally?
Well, when I first came to live here, I of course integrated myself into an expat group. So the first Korean was in that group, and she was a lady called Ki Lim, and she could speak very good English. But the other expats there were American, Australian, New Zealand, German. So actually being here for the first few months, I was very privileged to meet all these people. And I used to keep thinking that if I'd have stayed in England, I would never have met these people. So my first experience was with an expat group. But gradually I was introduced to, my colleagues are all Korean. But we tend not to socialise outside the university. So my social friends, a guy called Sam, he lives in Seoul, and he was introduced to me by one of my expat Australian friends. And we were cycling together.
That's right. How's the food for you?
Food?
Korean food.
In the first 9 months that I came here, I avoided kimchi like the plague. It was, but then I I spent 2 weeks in England, and when I came back, I was craving kimchi.
So now you're...
So since then, I've fully embraced most of the Korean cuisine. I do draw a line. I have 2 rules. Don't make friends with your food. So don't give it a name when it's swinging around outside. And secondly, don't eat anything that's still moving.
So you didn't try the octopus, leaf octopus?
I've been offered that twice and declined both times.
I think that's disgusting.
Well, it's moving, so I don't touch it.
Could you tell me about your university, about your students in details? How many students in your new university? How many foreigners? How many foreign teachers?
There are foreign teachers. That they are visiting professors. In terms of students, my student class size is around about 45, and that's wonderful because I can actually reach every one of them. I can go and sit with them. Whereas in the UK, my biggest class size was about 130. My colleagues tell me that the size has grown since then, over 200. And you cannot... I enjoy teaching and not particularly lecturing. And with small class sizes over here, I can almost do individual tuition. That's what I enjoy most. So the Korean students as well are so hard-working. They are tuned to working hard. Whereas the UK students are not just English, they're from all over the world. But some of them think that because they pay for their degree, they will get a degree.
And they will get a job.
And they will get a job afterwards. Whereas the Korean students are focused on education and they will work hard. If I give them a task, they will do it. However, something that's quite amusing me is that students are students all over the world. If you give a student 4 weeks to do an assignment, it will always be done in the last 3 days.
The students are always everywhere the same.
Yes, they are. Yeah.
Even Korean students.
Even Korean students. Yeah.
So they prefer to drink beer or soju during 3
well,
weeks?
it's perhaps not. I'm perhaps doing the Korean students a slight disservice. They do work very hard, and actually to get them motivated, I give them free time in class. We would call it a studio session in the English education system. But over here in Korea, normally the professor would just talk to the class and feed them information. My style is quite different. I will give them information and say, okay, then let's practice this. And therefore they can start off the projects early. And they are very motivated by that. I find that I get some great results. Principally, this last semester, I did a design and build project, and my colleagues were complaining that the students spent more time doing my project than their work. I said to one professor, I said, "And what do you teach?" He says, "I teach engineering mathematics."
That's not really interesting.
Well, exactly. I said, well, it's no contest really. Mine's creative, yours is... Yeah.
Tony, you're as a person who works in this area, in academia. Why did you choose this? Why did you choose this direction? Why you didn't choose the business or entrepreneurship or, or a government position, social projects? I
started off, my hometown is Sheffield in the UK. If you're born in Sheffield, you will become an engineer. And I started off with an apprenticeship, so that is, I took 4 years learning engineering. I used to be a machinist, working lathes and milling machines and so on. But then I went into companies. I did 12 years doing sales and marketing and all sorts of other things. But then I was made redundant, and I had to re-educate. So I was fortunate enough to get on a degree program, and from there I went into another company. I was assistant chief designer. We were building rock drills, which are large items of plant, which are 45 tons, crawler tracked vehicles. So that was, I was running the design office there. But there was an opportunity came up at my old university, and I was invited to apply. So I went, I got the job there. And really, teaching has been part of my interest for years and years and years, long before I started actually teaching. So the job at the university was brilliant. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I was teaching some fairly high-level things, doing research here and there, and doing consultancy too. So I was it was kind of a progression. So since I was at university, I did 28 years at University of Huddersfield, and during that time I must have done about 400 consultancy projects. I set up my own companies, so I have experience with company structures, IP protection, and
you do have experience in
commercial
business,
experience. And I was working very closely with lots of different companies as well. So I do have a lot of experience in that area.
Have you ever think to come back to business?
I don't really want to. I'm just
too many stress.
Yeah, I'm just enjoying myself teaching my students. My students are brilliant, and I so enjoy teaching them. A few weeks ago, I should say, they were pulling an all-nighter on one of my projects, and I knew that one particular group had not got the skills to do the build, so I stayed with them all night. And helped them to build their device. I was tired the next day. But it's this interaction that I enjoy most, and the Korean students are so receptive. They're very good.
So what's the biggest difference between Western, I mean in the way of how they making question, asking the question, or?
Well, I have to break down the barriers. When I first see them, they're used to just sitting there and not speaking, because that's the Korean way. So I break down the barriers. So for instance, I put my name on the board and I says, what are you going to call me? And to a man they say, Professor. And I said, no, Professor's my title, my name is Tony. So I get them to call me Tony right from the very beginning. And then I go and sit with them, instead of just standing there and talking from the lectern. And so I'm breaking down barriers all the time, and by the time they get to know me, they know that they can be quite casual with me. There is still the respect there, but I get a lot more feedback, and I'm able to answer questions. Halfway through the first semester I see them, they are asking questions. There's no fear. I'm able to not only get feedback on how well I'm doing, but I also get feedback on what they're learning. And of course, I'm speaking in English, and English is a second language to them, so I need to know how well they're receiving what I'm telling them. Quite often they nod, and I know that they're not understanding what I'm saying.
That's quite often.
But they're very enthusiastic and extremely hardworking. And when they get to know me, then it's great. We're friends. I'd like to promote this more casual approach.
And I think for Korean students it's unusual.
Very unusual.
Because I've heard that professor in Korea, they're
very formal.
They're very formal, and they don't like when someone asks a question or someone argue. Yeah,
sure. I'm totally different. I know some colleagues effectively say, I'm the professor, you're the student. You listen to what I say. I'm totally different. I make mistakes. And if a student wants to point out a mistake I've made, I say, great, please continue to do this. Let's get it right. So my approach is a lot more flexible, a lot more friendly, and I believe it's they learn a lot more than if they just sat there and listened, because students, I call it zoning out. Attention span is only 20 minutes. So maybe after 20 minutes I will stop talking, maybe go and sit with them, do something to break the monotony. And then when I come back a few minutes later, they're ready to listen again. And it's a technique I've developed over a long, long time.
So how do you think that, considering all these points about teaching in Korea, the Korean system of education, how effective is it to compare with English or Western?
Well, both systems are effective in different ways. The Korean system is focused on theory, on mathematics, so much so that when students finally graduate, they are engineering theorists. They have very little practical experience, and that is something that I feel is wrong with the Korean education system. People need to have practical abilities. I was running a solar power vehicle project 2 years ago, and I was surprised that the students did not know how to use a handsaw. I had to show them how to use it. So, and that really surprised me very much. But the system here is geared to having theorists coming out of degree programs, because students get jobs at some of the companies, and the companies will train them extra, and that's a more practical training.
And maybe they would be re-educated.
It's certainly a re-education system, yeah. And when you look at what Korea has achieved in the last 50 years, you've got to hand it to them. In 50 years they've come from an agricultural society to the 4th biggest economy in Asia, after India, China and Japan. You know, that is phenomenal growth rate.
Yeah, it is.
And it's because of education. Now, the difference in the education is that we're comparing it to the UK. In the early 80s, a report came out by Sir Monty Finiston, and it set out how engineering should be taught from leaving high school right through the colleges, through the university process. And that included lots of practical. And that was largely adopted. It's still running. I'm actually a product of that. But they don't have that in Korea. I would like to see students going into small companies during their vacation periods for internment. But it's impossible to do that because the attitude isn't there. And of course, most of the older boys go for military training. So it extends their degree quite a lot. The girls could do it. The girls would benefit, but
the girls are much smarter.
They are much smarter, absolutely are, yeah. Actually, all my time at university, now is coming up to 31 years as a professor. The girls are much smarter than the boys. Sorry, guys.
This is gender discrimination time.
It may be, but the girls are. I mean, there are lots of very smart boys out there, but girls think things through. Boys will go ahead and push things. Girls will think it out first.
This is the point.